I felt really powerless. I felt like my authority as her mom had been stripped away. And because my emotions were so high and I wasn't thinking clearly, I hesitantly agreed. To avoid conflict, I caved. I abdicated to appease my ex, falling back into an old relational pattern between us that reemerged in that highly charged emotional moment. Ooh, I still get choked up even talking about it, and it's been 15 years. It was awful.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey there, welcome. As always, we're so glad that you're joining us today. And I wonder, you probably have a coworker or a neighbor, maybe someone in your extended family who's dealing with difficult blended family situations. And so I wonder if you could think about your favorite episode. Maybe it's going to be today's episode.
Maybe.
And you just grab a copy of that and text your friend, text your family member and say, hey, I think Mike and Kim might be able to help you. We would love for you to do that because we know there's so many people who are looking for practical resources and they're just really hard to come by.
Yeah.
And so would you help us just spread the word? Because we want to help more and more people.
We absolutely do.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us today and thanks for helping us on the mission we're on. All right. Well, honey, what do you say we hop into today's episode?
Absolutely. We all know how quickly co-parenting conversations can go sideways. Angry text, snarky emails, legal threats, or manipulative comments. And when your ex is rude, reactive, dismissive, manipulative, or just plain unreasonable, well, it's tempting to fight fire with fire.
That's right.
You might feel the urge to send the sharper text, make your point stronger, defend yourself harder, or prove once and for all that you're right and they're wrong. But retaliation usually doesn't move things forward. It feeds the fire. When you're trying to build a more cooperative co-parenting relationship with a former spouse, it's easy for things to get really messy. Misunderstandings, ambiguity, miscommunication, misguided assumptions, and sometimes even unnecessary drama. All of that can create all kinds of tension.
Oh, absolutely. And reactive communication might feel satisfying for a moment, especially when you feel misrepresented or disrespected. But most of the time, it doesn't actually lead to progress. It escalates the conversation. It creates more defensiveness, and it can leave everyone just feeling more frustrated than before.
The goal we should all be striving for is to build a more cooperative co-parenting relationship. Why is this? Because it's beneficial for everyone, especially for your kids. Whether you recognize it or not, your kids are impacted by the emotional climate between their parents. Even if they're not reading the messages or hearing every phone call, they often pick up on the tension. Kids are very perceptive. They notice the stress on your face. They hear the shift in your tone. They feel the anxiety when adults are reactive towards each other, when the fire is being fueled. So when we talk about communication with an ex, we're not just talking about making life easier for the adults. We're talking about creating more stability, more predictability, and more peace for the kids.
For sure. And when it comes to communication or negotiation or problem solving with a former spouse, it's actually really best to be direct. while setting appropriate, clear boundaries. Now, you may have heard us talk about some of these strategies before, but today we're pulling several tools into one comprehensive episode, just like we did last week for communication in your couple relationship. So this week, we're going to help to gain some effective tools for communication in your co-parenting relationship. So we're going to throw a lot at you today, and we want to encourage you to head over to the show notes and click the link to the free download that's going to help you to find ways to implement this into your unique dynamics. Now, you can hit pause and download that right now, or you can just listen through to the end and download it after, and then roll up your sleeves and really get to work from this episode.
Absolutely. Now, honey, you just used the word direct. And sometimes people hear the word direct and assume communication has to be cold or harsh or rigid.
Yeah, get after it.
But you can be clear and direct while still being respectful, professional, and courteous.
That's right. Yeah.
That combination is really powerful, especially when it comes to a cooperative co-parenting relationship.
Yeah, because the goal isn't to change or control or convince your ex of anything. Let me say that again. The goal is not to change, control, or convince your ex of anything. The goal is to keep healthy communication open so that you could find a workable solution, especially when the issue impacts the kids. So that means we've got to stay focused on the facts, the kids' well-being, and a behavioral solution rather than getting stuck in who's right, who's wrong, and all that other stuff that we get into when it comes to our exes.
Yeah. And of course, that doesn't mean that you won't experience some difficult emotions when you're dealing with your ex. Of course you will. Co-parenting dynamics can stir up anger, anxiety, fear, guilt, resentment, and a whole lot of frustration. But there's a big difference between having emotions and letting those emotions drive the conversation.
Yeah.
You may need to process through some of your tough emotions with your spouse, a trusted friend, coach, or a counselor. You may need to take a walk and calm down or journal, pray, do some deep breathing, or take some time before responding to your ex. Because when you communicate with them, it's always best to stay calm, clear, and solution-focused.
That's right. Negotiation expert William Ury says, respect is the cheapest concession you can make in a negotiation. I love that. And it's really powerful because respect doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean giving in. And it definitely doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. Respect, it just simply means choosing to preserve the other person's dignity, even when the conversation is difficult. That old golden rule applies right here because if you want your ex to treat you with dignity and respect, you really need to focus on doing the same.
Yeah, that was a huge lesson for me in my co-parenting relationship. I had many negotiations with my ex over the years. Some were fairly simple, but others were tense and emotionally loaded. And looking back, the difference maker was usually whether I could maintain my composure and remain respectful, even when he wasn't able to do the same.
Yeah.
That didn't mean that I always felt calm inside. Sometimes I felt really frustrated or angry or like I was being bullied or manipulated. Sometimes I had to process a lot after a hard conversation. But when I chose respect, I felt better about who I was becoming. Each time, it built my confidence and resilience. I wasn't allowing his dysfunction to become my dysfunction. I wasn't letting his reactions dictate my approach or push my buttons the way they used to.
That's really powerful. Choosing respect toward your ex actually helped build self-respect in yourself. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it took some time.
Sure.
But I grew in my ability to focus on who I wanted to be, regardless of how he was showing up. And to be clear, respectful communication didn't magically change his behavior.
Ah, shucks.
That's an unrealistic expectation with a challenging ex. But over time, I do think it softened some of the tension because I stopped participating in the old dysfunctional patterns.
Yeah, that's a really important point because sometimes the dynamic does eventually change, not because the other person suddenly matured overnight or anything like that, but because you stop engaging in that same old unhealthy cycle.
Yes. And I also began to see my ex through a different lens. I began to see him as a hurting human being. Now, that didn't excuse his hurtful behavior, and it didn't mean that I trusted him. I didn't. But I learned to give him the dignity of a respectful response, even when I felt disrespected, dismissed, or devalued by him sometimes.
Yeah, you had to work really hard at humanizing him, especially through those tough years. Yeah, good job, honey. You know, that whole thing is a really helpful reframe. Respect doesn't require you to agree or concede or trust or pretend everything is okay, but it does tend to reduce tension instead of fueling it.
Right.
And honestly, this is something that we need in co-parenting, but we also need it in our world today, right? We live in a culture that often says, if we don't agree, then we can't respect each other.
Right.
But that kind of thinking creates division in communities, in families, in homes, and certainly between co-parents.
Yeah. And because we know how challenging communication with an ex can be, we've developed a simple framework to help structure these conversations. It's especially helpful when you need to respond or you need to initiate a hard conversation with your ex.
That's right.
And when we say hard, we're referring to any topic where there's a possibility of disagreement, opposition, misunderstanding, or emotional pressure.
So any topic.
Pretty much. For example, maybe you believe that your child would benefit from seeing a therapist, but your ex thinks that counseling is a waste of time and money. Or maybe your ex is signing your child up for too many activities without first consulting you, which of course impacts your schedule, your capacity, your budget, and your child's overall well-being. Or maybe your child is being pulled into adult conversations like schedule changes, financial decisions, or where they want to spend their time. And you need to kindly but clearly redirect those conversations back to the adults.
Yeah, it can be connected to all kinds of things, right? Money, medical decisions, educational options, behavioral concerns, the phone or screen time expectations, extracurricular activities, transportation, the planning of events, and things like vacations, birthdays, holidays, school concerts, sports, tournaments, or even graduation celebrations. Those are coming up soon, right?
Lots of prime ground for hard conversations.
For sure. These conversations can even come up around small things. Like who's responsible for buying a band instrument, or how much notice is needed for schedule changes, or whether birthday parties will be shared or separate, or what happens when one parent needs childcare during their parenting time. I know your guys are going, that's enough, Mike and Kim. We got plenty of scenarios.
Exactly. It's really any conversation where you need to negotiate, problem solve, clarify expectations, or work towards a decision that impacts your children's well-being or is creating stress in your home. And by the way, don't wait until the last minute to start these conversations. The sooner you can communicate with clarity and respect, the better chance you'll have of reducing unnecessary pressure and confusion and conflict.
That's right. Sudden negotiations usually trigger sudden emotions, right? And when emotions are high, it's much harder to stay thoughtful, grounded, and cooperative. So when you know a decision needs to be made, start early, stay clear about your goal, and use the framework that we're about to share to help keep the conversation focused and productive. Now, we call this communication framework the 4 A's, and we've shared this before on the show, but it's been quite a while. So we've honed it in a bit, and don't forget the free download will actually guide you through it as well, step by step. So make sure you grab your copy with the link in the show notes.
Yeah, and we've actually added a 5th A.
Ooh, oh, she just, that was a spoiler alert.
No
well,
suspense.
All right, just go download your worksheet. All right, so the 4 A's are pretty easy to remember. Now the 5 A's are pretty easy to remember with just a little practice. And it can help you to respectfully approach a hard conversation and stay focused as you navigate around the needs of your kids. So Honey, what's the first A?
The first A is affirm.
This one's the toughest one, I think.
Anytime you're negotiating or communicating with an ex, it's wise to set the tone of the conversation by using an affirmation. Now, you can affirm your ex in some way, even if it's just that their perspective matters to them. You might say, "Thanks for sharing your perspective. I can see this is important to you." Or, "I understand this is something you care about." Or, "I can see why you'd want some clarity around that."
Yeah. And that's really critical, actually. You can affirm someone without agreeing with them. Okay. Affirming doesn't mean, oh, you're right and I'm wrong. It simply communicates, I'm listening. I recognize that this matters to you, and I'm not here to dismiss or attack you.
Right.
Right? It's a very simple initial strategy. And that kind of response actually lowers defensiveness, and it sets a healthier tone for the overall dialogue.
Right.
Okay. Now, once you've affirmed, you can move on to the second A, which is to acknowledge. And we're primarily acknowledging one thing here, and it's just that, hey, we have some common ground as exes, okay? Now, you can sum this up in a simple statement like, I know we both want what's best for the kids. Or maybe, we both want this transition to go as smoothly as possible. Or, I get that we both care about helping Johnny move forward in a healthy direction, right? So it's the primary thing we're actually acknowledging simply is that we both want what's best for our kids. And so let's acknowledge that common ground.
Yeah, and common ground matters because co-parenting conversations can quickly turn into you versus me. But when you acknowledge what you both care about, it helps to shift the focus back to the kids.
Right.
Even when you disagree about the details, you can usually find some shared value like safety, stability, school success, emotional support, or reducing stress for the kids.
Yeah.
So first, offer that affirmation, then acknowledge the common ground. And what's the third A, honey?
The third A is to assure. And we're assuring, again, one thing, and that is cooperation. Okay. Now, this might sound something like, I'm confident we can find a workable solution. Or, I'm willing to collaborate on this. Or, I want us to work together on this in a way that addresses Johnny's emotional struggle and helps him feel supported, right? So what we're communicating or assuring around cooperation here is that I'm not trying to work against you. That's kind of the message we're sending. But I'm trying to work with you on behalf of our children. That's the message this simple assure step gives.
And for some co-parents, this assure part of the process can feel like a shift. If there's been a history of conflict, your ex may be expecting a fight.
Yeah.
They might come into the conversation defensive or suspicious or ready to argue or manipulate you. So when you assure cooperation, you're helping communicate that I'm not here to attack, I'm here to solve.
That's right. We're diffusing things, right? And then the fourth A is to ask. So we're going to ask for their partnership. This is where we share our idea or our request or the next step in the simplest way possible. We want to stay focused on small, actionable steps. So even if you have 8 great ideas for solving the problem, it's probably best to start with 1, maybe 2, because you don't want to get bogged down into the weeds or end up over-explaining things.
That's right. Too much information can overwhelm the conversation, especially if things are already a bit tense.
That's right.
So instead of sending a long message with every thought, concern, frustration, and proposed solution, keep it simple. You might say, I'm wondering if you'd consider adjusting the pickup time to 5:30 this Friday so the kids have time to attend their school event. Or what might be a helpful next step so we can support our kids through this transition? Or what do you think about researching therapists together or considering a coaching approach for Johnny?
Yeah, I like the variety there. Some of it is actually asking them to share what their ideas are, or sometimes, hey, what do you think about this idea, right? But we're asking, we're not telling, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then when they start to respond, your job is to really listen. And you don't have to agree with them to be able to listen to them. And I know that's hard, but it matters. Because respectful communication is not just about choosing better words, it's about choosing a better posture.
And regardless of how your ex responds, resist the urge to get defensive or impatient or to go into blame, control, or start criticizing. Stay respectful, stay courteous, and stay professional. And keep bringing the focus back to the positive things you want for your kids and your desire to work together on their behalf.
That's right. So that's the 4A framework. And yes, we've got another A coming, but let's just review real quick. First, we affirm. Start with a respectful, positive tone by offering an affirmation. Hey, I know that's really important to you. Then acknowledge the common ground, right? You're sending a message that we both care about what's best for the kids. Then assure cooperation. Hey, I really want us to work together. And then finally ask, I'd really like to collaborate around one or two possible next steps. Affirm, acknowledge, assure, and ask. Now, honey, you let the cat out of the bag, but we're adding a 5th A. So we're going to complicate it now. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
So let's add a 5th A. And it's just as important as the others. And that is to be attentive.
Yes.
Okay. This simply means to stay focused. Like really listen to hear your ex's perspectives, concerns, and ideas before you get dismissive and write them off. And I know that's a hard thing.
It is.
But it's really important.
And again, this is another great place to apply the golden rule. If you want to be heard and understood, well, you'll need to stay attentive and seek to understand. Now, the 5 A's is a helpful tool to promote cooperation and foster productive communication. And it works best when you're able to stay respectful and non-reactive in those hard moments when you really want to criticize, blame, or lash out. Reactivity, it's not going to help. Instead, repeat the 5 A's again and again, as many times as needed as you navigate negotiations, solve problems, and make decisions on behalf of your kids. Now, I really encourage you, don't give up on this. Stay steady and stay consistent. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes time for these patterns to change. But it is possible to move from angry associates to cooperative colleagues. We've seen it happen, but it takes intentional effort to be the change that you want to see happen.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the 5 A's. We said we were going to throw a lot at you today, and that's why we created a free download. But let's move on into some of the challenging dynamics that pop up between ex-spouses and current spouses and how to handle yourself when that tension hits. Okay. So here's the reality. There are so many unpredictable and confusing dynamics that can catch you off guard when you're co-parenting. And this is something that we help blended couples with all the time. Understanding and managing the tension between households is such a common struggle. And unfortunately, that tension can create a lot of confusion, pain, and disconnection, not only in the co-parenting relationship, but guess what? In your own home and in your marriage as well.
You probably already know that.
Yes. That's why it's important to learn how to slow down, stay steady, and respond with clarity instead of reacting out of pressure or emotion. And we really want to move toward healthy, clear boundaries.
That's right. And we're definitely not strangers to this kind of tension. If you've been listening, you know that. In fact, it's a major part of our story. But for those of you who haven't heard this before, for the first 10 years following my divorce, my former spouse and I were fairly cooperative co-parents. We had a 50-50 schedule that seemed to work well for everyone. But when our daughter Annika turned 12, everything suddenly changed. One day, my ex asked to meet me alone for a meeting, but when I arrived, he wasn't alone. He had brought Annika with him. He positioned her in front of me and instructed her to tell your mom what you want. Man, she was so nervous and upset. She was staring and shuffling at the floor. But eventually, with the pressure from him, she said, "I want to live at my dad's house now." Boy, was I blindsided. I was hurt, confused, I was overwhelmed, and completely caught off guard. My ex took over the conversation and pressured me to agree, saying that this was best for Annika and it's what she wanted. And honestly, I didn't know how to respond. I felt really powerless. I felt like my authority as her mom had been stripped away. And because my emotions were so high and I wasn't thinking clearly, I hesitantly agreed. To avoid conflict, I caved. I abdicated to appease my ex, falling back into an old relational pattern between us that reemerged in that highly charged emotional moment. I still get choked up even talking about it, and it's been 15 years. It was awful.
Yeah.
More than 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah. That extremely hard meeting became the beginning of a long and painful season in family court, and it had a significant impact on Annika, on my relationship with her, and on our whole family. Looking back, I can see that things could have been very different if I'd managed that tension-filled situation better.
Now, we realize that's a little bit more of an extreme example of a co-parenting negotiation, but most blended families will face moments when an ex presents a request or voices an expectation that's going to impact your home, your marriage, or your relationship with your kids. So we've all got to learn ways to stay united in your current relationship while you're negotiating with an ex. Stepfamily expert Patricia Pappernow talks about how easy it is for blended couples to make what she calls easy wrong turns, those mistakes that we don't mean to make, but still end up falling into because blended family dynamics are complex and sometimes confusing.
Yeah, I definitely made an easy wrong turn in that meeting with my ex. But over time, I learned how to make better decisions in the heat of the moment, especially when I felt pressured, confronted, confused, or emotionally flooded. So let's look at 3 strategies that can help you navigate these tense situations with your ex.
Yeah, that's right. There are 3 distinct strategies, but they can also kind of work together in tandem. So the first one is pushing pause on pressure. Look, here's the truth. You don't have to make a decision on the spot on everything. Okay. And you definitely don't have to let your kids be pulled into adult conversations that should be worked out between the parents. Unless there's a real emergency, like someone's in danger or headed to the hospital, it's okay to say, I need some time to think about this and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. That's what I wish I had done. In that fateful meeting with Annika and my ex, I could have said something like this to my ex. Hey, listen, I heard your perspective, but this decision is too important to make right now. I need time to think this through, and we can schedule another time to talk. That would have allowed me to step away, calm down, process my emotions, talk things through with you, honey, and consider what was truly best for Annika.
Yep.
And if your child has already been pulled into the middle, as the case with Annika, you can still reassure them later. You might say, honey, I want you to know that your dad and I are the ones responsible for making these kinds of decisions. We both want what's best for you, and we're capable of working this out without putting you in the middle. You can keep it really simple. And don't badmouth the other parent. Just reassure your child that adult decisions belong with the adults.
Yeah, that's right. This strategy, this pushing pause on pressure, can help you to avoid making unilateral decisions with your former spouse before discussing them with your current spouse, right? Decisions around money or schedules or privileges, priorities, contact between the homes, anything else that impacts your household. It's really wise to talk about that with your current partner before you just agree to something with your ex. So when you feel pressured to make a decision on the spot, push pause. Let your ex know you need the time to think through their request and that you'll get back to them after you've had a chance to consider it. In fact, practice makes better. I might even encourage you to try it on some small things now, even when you don't have to really push pause, just so you can introduce a new pattern into your relationship.
Yeah, and don't use this strategy as a means of avoiding.
Yes,
you do need to get back to them.
Let's
don't just let it hang out there.
That's right. Okay, so push pause on pressure. Let's look at another strategy. It's a 3-part piece. Examine your emotions, stay rooted in the truth, and identify your values. When you're negotiating with an ex, it's common to feel things like fear, guilt, anger, confusion. And when you make decisions from a highly charged emotional place, you're more likely to make decisions that you later regret.
Exactly. I learned that when I made a decision just to relieve my own discomfort in the moment, it's usually not the best decision for my child or for our family.
Right.
So instead of reacting from a place of fear or guilt, pause long enough to identify what you're feeling. Process those emotions with your partner, a trusted friend, coach, counselor, or an attorney if needed. Then stay rooted in the truth. Here's an example. If you fear that your child will think you're being unsupportive if you don't go along with all the activities that your ex is pushing for, remind yourself of what's true. If you've consistently shown up, supported your child, and cared for them, then the truth of your steady, loving actions will speak louder than your ex's accusations or their high expectations.
That's right. And once you're rooted in truth, then you can identify your values. What matters most in your home? Responsibility, stability, resourcefulness, emotional safety, healthy boundaries, financial wisdom.
Downtime?
Yeah. When you're clear on your own values, you can make decisions that align with your family instead of making snap decisions under pressure.
Yes. So first, you're pressing pause on pressure. Then you're taking time to examine your emotions. You're staying rooted in the truth. And then you're identifying your values. And the third strategy is to set and maintain healthy boundaries.
That's right. We once coached a couple where the husband, during his single parent years, had developed an unspoken arrangement with his ex. He would help her maintain the family home that she still lived in and he was financially interested in. At that time, it made sense. He knew the house well. He didn't mind coming over when she needed help fixing a leaky faucet, taking care of yard work, or handling some of the other household issues. And as a single guy, he had more time available, and he also enjoyed the chance to see his kids a little bit more when he was there helping out. But then he met a wonderful woman, and he remarried. There was a big problem. That unspoken arrangement with his ex continued. So imagine how his new wife felt when they're in the middle of date night, and he gets a call and wants to jump up and rush over and fix something at the ex's house. Well, you can imagine that didn't go very well.
No.
That ongoing pattern created tension and conflict in his marriage. Now, what may have worked during his single parent years no longer fit the season of life that he was in now. So he needed to set a new and healthy boundary with his ex around this issue. A simple way that we can set a clear boundary is a little process we call affirm can't can. First, you just affirm what matters to the other person. It can sound something like, hey, I know it's really important that the sink in the upstairs bathroom works.
Next, state what you can't do. This is where the new boundary is that you're going to be setting. I can't come over and handle that for you right now.
Then you can state something you can do. So think about what you're actually willing to do that would be good for you, your family, and your current relationship. So you might respond with something like, but I can give you the number of a good plumber, or I might be able to take a look at it next weekend. You see, that framework actually helps you to stay respectful, like we talked about earlier, keeps clarity, and you're being direct while you're still setting a boundary. And when your ex pushes back, which is most likely to happen, you don't have to take the bait. You don't have to get defensive. You don't have to over-explain anything. You actually just calmly repeat the boundary, the exact same words as many times as necessary. I know it's important to you that the sink in the upstairs bathroom works. I can't come over and handle that for you right this minute, but I can give you the number of a good plumber, or I might be able to take a look at it next weekend. You just repeat.
It usually takes time to undo those old established patterns.
Yeah.
So you may need to become kind of a broken record for a while as the new pattern gets established.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the husband in our example maintained his new boundary in a kind, respectful, and consistent way.
Yeah.
And eventually, His ex-wife was able to step up and take responsibility for caring for the home without depending on him. As it turned out, she was quite capable. And just imagine how this new boundary made his current wife feel. Cherished, prioritized, and valued.
That's right. So when you run into a tense situation with your ex, remember these 3 simple, distinct, but also connected strategies. First, push pause on the pressure.
Then examine your emotions, stay rooted in the truth, and identify your values.
And finally, set and maintain healthy boundaries using the Affirm, Can't, Can framework.
Now, you may not be able to control how your ex responds, but you can control how you show up. When you learn to pause, stay grounded, make values-based decisions, and maintain healthy boundaries, you're not just reducing conflict with your ex. You're protecting your marriage, you're creating more stability for your kids, and you're building more peace in your home.
That's right. Now, I just need to be frank with you. There are no guarantees with all of this.
Sorry.
Okay? You can't change your ex's character. You don't have any control over how they show up. You can use the tools that we've shared with you today, and they might still respond really poorly. But your best chance to build a more cooperative co-parenting relationship is to focus on influencing the dynamic over time by consistently showing up differently yourself.
That's right. Because you're the only person you have control over. And how you choose to treat your ex, even while they're lashing out at you, that can make a difference over time. Think about it. It won't be quite as satisfying for them to retaliate, provoke, or oppose you if you're responding in a calm and respectful way and you refuse to engage in the drama. When you choose not to take the bait, the old pattern starts to lose some of its power, and that's when things can start to change.
Yeah, and when they realize that you're no longer going to engage in unproductive, hurtful communication, they may eventually decide it's just not worth continuing that behavior either. Now, again, no guarantees, but consistent respect, clarity, and boundaries can influence the environment over time.
Yes. And that brings us to this topic of consistency. So important. Consistency is how you show up over and over again. If you really want to reduce unnecessary conflict and build healthy influence in your co-parenting relationship, you need to become known as someone who is calm, clear, respectful, and steady. Now, you don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be predictable.
That's right. You know, when your tone changes based on your mood or your boundaries shift depending on your stress level, or you only follow through some of the time, you end up sending mixed signals. And mixed signals invite pushback, confusion, or sometimes even more chaos. But when your ex knows what to expect from you, your boundaries, your tone, your follow through, and your focus on the kids, it becomes a lot harder for those conversations to start to spiral.
Yeah, this was a hard one for me personally. Early on, I might send one respectful message, but if I didn't get the response I'd hoped for, I'd follow up with a kind of snarky comment, a passive-aggressive reply, or I'd avoid things altogether.
You're snarky and avoidant sometimes.
Sometimes. You know that. Stop. My co-parenting approach was inconsistent for quite a while, and I could feel how it eroded trust and progress. What I eventually learned is that consistency in communication with an ex is just as critical as consistency in maintaining values in your own home.
That's right. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Speak with clarity, respect, and confidence, and then repeat that process over and over and over, even when your ex acts out.
Yes.
This doesn't mean being rigid or harsh. It means being consistent and kind at the same time. You might be accused of being controlling or inflexible, but over time, people start to understand that you're not being difficult, you're being deliberate. You're choosing stability over chaos.
And here's the beautiful result. Your kids feel more secure because they see you showing up with consistency. Your spouse feels supported because they know that the two of you are united in your decisions. And you spend less energy managing drama because your communication patterns have become clear and trustworthy.
That's right. Consistency is how you quietly build influence. And influence is really the bigger picture here. It's not just about agreements that you and your ex are able to make, and it's definitely not about control over the other home. Influence comes from how you handle yourself. It impacts all those negotiations with your ex. It impacts your children's experience. It impacts the kind of vision you're giving for your kids for how they can become adults someday.
That's right. You may never get the other parent to fully agree with you, and that's okay. Your real power lies in creating a consistent, values-driven environment in your home. That's where seeds of influence are planted, and over time, they can steadily grow.
That's right. We saw this over time with Annika. There were plenty of moments where we felt powerless, especially during our 3-year season in the family court. But when we stepped back and focused on being clear, respectful, and consistent with her dad, and when we focused on similar approaches at home between each other and with her, we saw her start to respond positively to that. And even as an adult today, she's working on becoming that kind of person herself, someone who lives out our family values.
For sure. She learned that even when things were chaotic in her other home, she could rely on us. And that's still true today. That trust didn't happen overnight. It was built moment by moment in all the small ways we showed up in our home and across households.
That's right. So the next time you need to communicate or negotiate or problem solve with your ex, we want you to try using these strategies from today. We started out today with the 5 A's: affirm your former spouse in some way, acknowledge the common ground, assure cooperation, ask for their partnership, and then be attentive.
And remember, respectful communication isn't just for your ex, it's for your kids too. They're watching how you handle conflict. They're noticing your tone, your body language, your steadiness, and your ability to stay grounded under pressure. They're learning how to handle hard conversations by watching you.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. You're not just trying to get through one hard text thread or one frustrating phone call. You're building a legacy of emotional resilience and safety for your kids. So when things get tense, remember those 3 strategies of navigating tension. Push pause on the pressure, examine your emotions, stay rooted in the truth, and identify your values, and set and maintain healthy boundaries.
So this week, we encourage you to ask yourself, what's one conversation I could handle differently? What's one boundary I need to reinforce with kindness? Where am I tempted to react, defend, or take the bait? And how can I show up with more clarity, respect, and consistency?
That's right. We encourage you to go grab your copy of that free download to plan your hard conversations and tense situations. Because when you choose to build a more cooperative co-parenting relationship, you're creating more security, stability, and peace for your kids. And guess what? For yourself too.
Yay. Now, as we said, my example of being pressured during that tension-filled meeting into agreeing to change my daughter's visitation was pretty extreme. And that wasn't our focus today. But if you are struggling with more extreme challenges, first, we're so sorry. We know how much pain that brings for everyone. And we want to encourage you to try using the tools that we've shared today, as well as check out the show notes where we've linked some past episodes that might help you to face those challenges that you're up against.
That's right. So do that and make sure to grab your copy of the free downloadable worksheet for this episode just by clicking the link in the show notes. Then join us next week in our Simple Step bonus episode, where we'll be exploring a critical aspect of healthy, effective communication that applies across the board in your current relationship with co-parenting, really anytime you need to be clear and kind as you navigate a challenging conversation.
And that's the skill of assertive communication.
Ooh, I love it.
Many of us tend to be passive when sensitive topics come up, or some of us become aggressive or even passive aggressive. But the benefits of assertiveness are significant, It allows you to speak truthfully without being harsh and will help you to stay connected without abandoning yourself or others.
That's right.
It's such an important tool.
So make sure you're following the show on Apple Podcasts or over on Spotify, wherever you happen to be listening, so that you don't miss that Simple Step episode. Mm-hmm. And hey, don't forget to share this episode out with a friend, a colleague, a family member who might also need it. But for now, we're going to make today's episode a wrap.
Until next time.